What if Darth Plagueis went to Naboo to fight the Jedi with Maul in The Phantom Menace? That's our story, hope you guys enjoy, and let's get right into it. Our story begins on Coruscant, with Darth Plagueis overlooking the great city, but focusing specifically on a landing platform where a Naboo royal starship was preparing to take off. As Plagueis waited for the group to arrive, he recounted events of the past few weeks. Together, he and Palpatine secured Newt Gunray into their grip, and they manipulated him into orchestrating the blockade of Naboo to protest the taxation of free trade zones. These plans were unfortunately disrupted as Chancellor Valorum went behind the Senate to send 2 Jedi on a secret mission to Naboo. Now the Queen has escaped the planet, but things were working in their favor after all. The Queen, being on Coruscant, allowed her to call for a vote of no confidence in Valorum, and after some careful manipulation, Palpatine was almost assured to win the Chancellorship, due to the backing of human core systems and the tragic events on Naboo. Things were going well, but there was a new issue. Qui-Gon Jinn discovered a boy on Tatooine, a 9-year-old human that won the Boonta Eve pod race. And both Plagueis and Sidious knew deep down this could be the prophesized chosen one, born from the Force as the Sith took a strong hold of the Force. Anakin was the Force retaliating. But Plagueis saw opportunity here, and as Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Padme, Jar Jar, and Anakin got to the landing platform, Plagueis knew one thing for certain. Anakin cannot become a Jedi, and he can certainly not be trained by Qui-Gon. So as the Naboo starship flew off, Plagueis contacted Sidious and told him that plans have changed. Originally, Sidious was going to announce to the Senate that Plagueis will be his co-chancellor, but that will have to wait. Plagueis said he is going to Naboo to aid Maul in order to ensure Qui-Gon dies, and Anakin does not become a Jedi. Sidious acknowledged this, and said that in time, they will make the co-chancellor announcement, but for now, he will just focus on getting himself elected. On the trip over to Naboo, Plagueis allowed himself to imagine the galaxy under him and Palpatine. With his funding and influence, they will be able to do whatever they want. Palpatine's charisma and his influence will be unstoppable. The Jedi were already dead, they just didn't know it. The clone army on Kamino was being orchestrated by Dooku. Palpatine had spent years training Maul to be an elite assassin, and the young boy Anakin was already harboring feelings of resentment for the Jedi. Plagueis was deep in Sith meditation until his droid 114D alerted him that they have arrived on Naboo. This was good, and Plagueis landed in the back of the refinery, making his way through until he opened the doors to find Maul waiting for the Jedi. Maul stood with sudden urgency, pulling out his lightsaber, but Plagueis simply pulled it into his own hands and told Maul that he is of no threat to him. In fact, he is the master of Darth Sidious. Maul's eyes went wide with surprise, then confusion, then acceptance, as Plagueis let his presence be felt, and Maul could tell how strong he was in the Force. Maul didn't know that Sidious had a master, but he always knew Sidious had secrets, and so Maul knelt down and told Plagueis he will be of service. Plagueis said this is good, and together, they will kill the Jedi. It wasn't long before Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Padme, and the Naboo Guard opened the door to see the Sith, though it was only Maul they could see for now. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan stayed while the others left, and as the 2 Jedi ignited their blades and ran at Maul, a second red blade joined the fight from behind the wall. As Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were distracted by Plagueis' entrance, Maul force-pushed both of them into the refinery area. The 2 Jedi scrambled to their feet as they looked upon the Sith. Plagueis was making no effort to hide his face, and Qui-Gon recognized him, Higo Damask, chairman of the banking clan. Qui-Gon had met him before, spoken with him, and the whole time he was a Sith. Plagueis, through his metallic breathing mask, told Qui-Gon that the end of the Jedi begins today, and the 2 of them now dueled as Darth Maul took on Obi-Wan Kenobi. Plagueis hated lightsaber duels. He preferred a contest in the Force, but that didn't mean he was bad at dueling. In fact, at least according to Sidious and his own former master Tenebrous, Plagueis was a master of the craft, and Qui-Gon was seeing that right now, as he was backed up to the edge of one of the refinery bridges, the green and red blades slamming against each other. Plagueis swung left, forcing Qui-Gon to block, as Plagueis then punched him in the head with his other hand, then pushed him to the floor. Qui-Gon flipped back up, putting up a good fight, swinging hard to make Plagueis stumble, before barely missing his breathing mask with another strike. But Plagueis shot lightning, which Qui-Gon did catch, but Plagueis was now taunting him. He told Qui-Gon that his old master, Dooku, has seen the truth of it all, and has joined the Sith. Qui-Gon's eyes went wide with shock as Plagueis revealed this, and Plagueis then said that soon, Anakin will join them as well. This put Jin off balance, and Plagueis blasted lightning into him as he fell off the bridge and was now hanging by his fingers. Plagueis turned to see Maul and Kenobi still in battle, so he hit Obi-Wan with Force Lightning. As he writhed in pain, Maul stabbed Kenobi through the gut and kicked him into the never-ending darkness below. One down, and Plagueis turned back to Qui-Gon, lifting him into the air, telling him that the revenge of the Sith is finally here, and Maul spun his blade through the air, cutting Jin in half, as he too fell forever into the darkness. Maul, breathing heavily, nodded to Plagueis, and the Sith Master told him he still has much to learn, but Sidious has trained him well. And together, they walked back to the Naboo hangar, and they waited for young Skywalker to return. As the Naboo N1 ships began to return from their victory, Plagueis felt for the one Anakin was in, and together he and Maul used the Force to destroy every single other N1 fighter before subduing Anakin with the Force and taking him with them back to Coruscant. The hangar was laced with explosives now to make this all look like an accident, and the Sith left Naboo with the Jedi dead, the Trade Federation defeated, which was fine, as Palpatine officially secured the position of Chancellor. In his first speech as new Chancellor Palpatine, the charismatic man from Naboo would vow to restore the Republic to the glory days of old, while disavowing the actions of greedy corporations like the Trade Federation and their blockade of Naboo. He would bring light the achievements of Higo Damask throughout the years, aiding him in his political rise, while also keeping the Republic safe from the shadows. Palpatine would highlight that Damask was responsible for the creation of the Republic Reserve Administration, helping keep politicians in check with their spending. Palpatine also revealed that Damask was responsible for the resettlement acts that allowed beings to explore new hyperspace paths to outlying systems in need of aid, colonizing distant worlds and bringing them into the Republic. Palpatine went over Damask's childhood on Megiddo, his contributions into rebuilding the intergalactic banking clan, and eventually, Palpatine said that Damask will be his personal co-chancellor, and the Senate cheered this revelation. Higo Damask, aka Darth Plagueis, listened to all of this on the HoloNet, and he was pleased with his apprentice. After decades of perfect political manipulation, Palpatine was Supreme Chancellor, and he was co-chancellor, and the Jedi were in a full-blown panic. Over the last week or so, they were called upon for a secret mission to Naboo to help negotiate an end to the blockade, but events spiraled from there. Qui-Gon escaped with the Queen, but he reported an encounter with a Sith Lord. The Jedi were skeptical, but now there was no denying it. Both Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were dead. Their bodies were discovered in the bottom of the Naboo refinery, or at least what remained of their bodies. They were clearly killed by a lightsaber, and to top it all off, the young boy Anakin Skywalker was either killed in the hangar explosion or taken by the Sith. The Council was paranoid. They knew the future was uncertain. When Plagueis arrived back on Coruscant, Anakin Skywalker was kept knocked out by medical droids, and he gathered Darth Sidious, Darth Maul, and Dooku to the Limerge building in the industrial sector. This was the first time they were all meeting, and the first time Dooku even found out about Plagueis, but the plans for the next decade were set. Continue to sow division between the Republic and the Jedi, garner power politically, and soon, all-out war between the Republic and Separatists will allow the Sith to turn this broken Republic into their Sith Empire. Long ago, Plagueis was sure that he would never need to pass on his power. He would become the most powerful Sith of all time, and live forever in his galaxy. But Darth Sidious impressed him more every day, and he saw now how vital Sidious was to their grand plan. For now, at least. As for Sidious, he was content with all of this. He often contemplated trying to kill Plagueis, but there was no need for that now. At least, not yet. He was Chancellor, and Plagueis was his equal. After all, the Sith Master has nearly discovered the secrets to immortality. Sidious had other allies in Maul and Dooku ready to carry out the plans. Maul had spent his entire life, or at least all that he could remember, as apprentice to Sidious, growing up on Mustafar and in this very building, training, waiting for his opportunity, and now he was a trusted Sith assassin. And then Dooku, the angry former Jedi who knew the Republic must be torn down, was ready to do whatever it takes. Dooku admired the power in this room, both politically and through the Force. He saw the potential for change, and together, the four Darkside warriors would embrace their galaxy, with Skywalker waiting in the years to come to be another powerful asset. And through the years, the influence of the Sith would spread like a hidden disease through the galaxy. Early on, Chancellor Palpatine was seen by the people and even by the Jedi as a welcome change from the Chancellorship of Valorum. Although Valorum was loyal to the Jedi, he often had his hands tied behind his back by the Senate committees that were constantly overruling his actions, taking power away from him, whereas Palpatine was more trusted by the Senate and the corporations, allowing more legislature to pass, including expansion of the Republic, aided by funding from the banking clan in Hago Damask. Darth Plagueis, working as Damask, put forth all of this funding and made it look as if the banking clan were a force for good in the Republic. But in the shadows, he was making deals with the Hutt clan and the Black Sun in order to hurt planets in the Outer Rim. Plagueis personally met with Jabba the Hutt a few times, paying for new pod racing events and tracks in exchange for Jabba to spread more death sticks and to create more terror groups to ravage Outer Rim systems, making them hate the Jedi and the Republic. Plagueis did this around the galaxy, and he closely monitored whenever the Jedi would send their own masters or knights to deal with the rising crime, so Maul could be deployed. On more than a few occasions, Jedi would travel to Outer Rim worlds to deal with crime lords, only to be met with the power of Maul, who would kill them and make sure their bodies were never discovered. This was risky, but it was done to increase the Jedi paranoia. Plagueis and Sidious were toying with the Jedi Order, ruling a galaxy the Jedi thought they had some control over, while slowly killing them. The Jedi Council was putting a lot of resources into finding the Sith, and before long, the Senate began to hear about this Jedi hunt for these Sith, and rumors began to spread, largely from Dooku, that the Jedi were lying. There was no such thing as a Sith, but more and more Jedi are actually using their power for evil. The Council is trying to hide it. This made the galaxy begin to see the Jedi as power-hungry, and the Order was crumbling more every day. All the while, Dooku was managing his home planet of Sereno, but he was also training the young Anakin Skywalker to grow in the dark side. After his capture on Naboo, Anakin had memories of Qui-Gon wiped from his mind, and instead all he remembered was the Jedi denying to train him, calling him dangerous, and now Dooku was using that to fuel Anakin into a dark side warrior. Plagueis also orchestrated an accident on Tatooine that resulted in the death of Anakin's mother, helping Anakin find feelings of darkness deep inside of him. He was too old to be trained like Maul, fueled by hatred and anger from day one, so Dooku would be the perfect master. Anakin lived and grew up in a nice area on the planet Sereno, and as he got older, he was determined to become the most powerful being that ever lived. The years would go by, the Sith and the dark side continued to rise, and the light side continued to fade, as Jedi only grew in their paranoia. More Jedi disappeared on missions into the Outer Rim, more power was taken from them and converted to the Chancellor's office, and in due time, it looked like a war between the Republic and Separatists was inevitable, which of course, was exactly what the Sith wanted. Dooku, Maul, and Anakin were leading the Separatists, while Sidious and Plagueis led the Republic, when in reality they were all on the same side. But as war was approaching, Darth Sidious began to have doubts about the hierarchy of the Sith. The feelings from the past, from when he was becoming Chancellor, slowly began to creep back in. He felt like he deserved to be the true Sith Master, and he also believed Plagueis was wasting his time trying to become invincible through the Force. The darkness was unnatural after all, and yet while Palpatine was the forefront of the Republic, Plagueis would often disappear for months at a time for his own Force experiments. Sidious soon felt like there were things about the Force that Plagueis didn't teach him, and in time, Sidious knew that Plagueis may try to kill him. So just before the war could begin, Sidious traveled to Megiddo to meet with his master and kill him first. Plagueis had turned an abandoned office building into his own personal lab here on Megiddo, and he'd used his influence to make it seem like the area was highly radioactive, ensuring that no one ever entered this lab. But Sidious knew it was safe, and so today he hid his presence in the Force, and he slithered through this lab. Inside of the lab, there were all sorts of living creatures, all the way from rats to humans, and even a Jedi that Sidious recognized to be Sifo Dyas, long thought to be dead. Sidious used the Force to sense that he was dead now, but it was a recent death, as if he were experimented on. Sidious felt a cold chill run down his spine as he continued moving through the lab, looking for Plagueis, ready to finally assassinate his master and become the true Sith Lord. But as Sidious entered the main area, the floor under him was suddenly ripped away, and Sidious was pulled underground and slammed hard into the floor. He tried getting to his feet, but chains of electricity were slammed into his limbs and all around his neck, as Plagueis began to laugh, telling Sidious he has been expecting him. Sidious was fighting off the pain of the electric chains digging into his skin, and Plagueis told his apprentice that he would like to show off some of his recent experiments. Plagueis suddenly stabbed his red blade through Sidious's back, killing him instantly. And about a minute later, Sidious was revived, gasping for air, and he realized the stab wound was healed. Plagueis stood in front of his apprentice, and he said he has mastered control over the midichlorians, and truly learned to control life, both for himself and for others. Sidious, still restrained with the electric chains, begged for forgiveness, saying he still has much to learn. But Plagueis told his former apprentice that he has served his role well, but his time is up, and Plagueis swung the red blade through Sidious's neck, ensuring his immediate death. On Coruscant, the Republic was in disarray. The Chancellor was missing, and rumors of Count Dooku's droid army infiltrating into the galaxy were growing. The Senate was calling upon the Jedi Order to put a stop to this, but Master Windu was trying to assure the people that Dooku is no murderer. He is a former Jedi, and the Council is sure that Dooku will find a way to reach a peaceful agreement. But that is when the booming voice of Higo Damask suddenly echoed around the rotunda of the Senate chambers. Co-Chancellor Damask announced that a tragedy has occurred, and he showed a hologram of Chancellor Palpatine, dead, killed by a lightsaber. The entire Senate gasped in horror, and Damask yelled out, "The Jedi have done this," as Palpatine truly was close to ensuring a peaceful solution to the Separatist crisis. But it is the Jedi who seek war in order to gain control of the Republic for themselves. Windu, of course, tried denying this, but his voice was drained out completely. And Damask, now the lone Chancellor, continued to speak, saying that he also just discovered that a former Jedi, Master Sidious, created an army for the Jedi to use in the coming war. Plagueis pulled up the files from Kamino, confirming that a Jedi put in the order for the clones. And Plagueis continued speaking mightily to the Senate, as he said he has discovered this army, and he told them the truth about the Jedi, and now this army has declared their loyalty to the Republic, not to the Jedi. The senators cheered, and Plagueis pushed a button to open up the Senate roof, revealing a fleet of Venators emerging above the planet, and tens of thousands of clone troopers were deployed into the planet as Plagueis executed Order 66. They were headed straight for the Jedi Temple. Plagueis looked to the pod Windu was in, and the Jedi Master was gone, clearly trying to go hopelessly save the temple. And under the command of Anakin Skywalker, Darth Maul, and Count Dooku, the giant assault began with a deafening explosion that tore through the temple's gates. Like an unstoppable tide, clones poured into the sacred halls, blaster bolts lighting up the once peaceful corridors. Jedi Knights and Padawans, caught off guard, ignited their blades, but were overwhelmed by the sheer numbers. The clones were relentless, shooting down Jedi as they attempted to form a defense, their bodies falling amidst shattered statues and burning tapestries. Gunships and speeders flew around the temple, picking off any Jedi trying to escape, as at least 50,000 clones were here. Anakin led the charge through the heart of the temple, his red lightsaber blazing as he cut down Jedi after Jedi with a cold hatred for them. He moved with an overwhelming aura of darkness, slicing through defenses, pushing deeper into the temple's inner sanctums, where council members mounted a desperate resistance. In the main halls, the mightiest of the Jedi stood their ground, lightsabers flashing in blurs of blue, purple, and green, but even they were no match for the combined assault. Dooku's elegant saber work and Maul's ferocity ripped through the Jedi Masters, their corpses scattered at the feet of the towering statues that watched over the carnage. Clone troopers followed in their wake, executing the wounded and securing chambers with grim efficiency. The Jedi were not battle-seasoned at all. They were not even close to prepared for a fight like this. Yoda, Windu, Plo, and every other Jedi never stood a chance as the temple was torn apart and clones moved with the Sith assassins. Elsewhere, the slaughter continued unchecked. In the meditation rooms, younglings huddled together in fear as clones stormed in, and they carried out their orders. In the training rooms and archives, Padawans fought desperately to defend the halls, but the clones' endless wave of blaster fire mowed them down. Lightsabers fell silent, one by one, the temple echoing with the sound of marching and blasters. By dawn, the grand spires of the temple had all fallen, as the temple crumbled and burned away, and Chancellor Damask declared that the Separatists will be the next to be defeated. Again, many senators cheered. They were excited to see a strong leader, and Palpatine was the martyr for all of this. The senators thought the Jedi killed him, and after years of creating fear of the Jedi throughout the Republic, the people saw this as a necessary move to destroy the Order. The Clone Wars began with Dooku, Maul, and Anakin acting on one side, while Plagueis on the other, and every day Plagueis would divert more power away from the Senate and to himself. There were, of course, many senators who strongly opposed the rule of Plagueis, but many of them, including Bail Organa, Ryo Chuchi, Padme Amidala, and Mon Mothma, would be involved in war accidents that would see their deaths, and the rest of the senators that opposed Plagueis would either retire in defeat, submit to his rule, or suffer the same fate as Padme and her friends. After 3 years of warfare that saw a suffering galaxy, Plagueis would bring an end to the conflict by gathering Dooku, Anakin, and Maul for a meeting on Iriadu to end all of this. Dooku, Skywalker, and Maul knelt to their master as Plagueis entered the room, his tall form almost spectral under the flickering lights. He looked as if he hadn't aged a day during all these years. But Dooku, Skywalker, and Maul had a silent agreement. They knew Plagueis killed Sidious, and today they would do the same to Plagueis, then take over the galaxy for themselves. But Plagueis moved with the calm grace of one who believed himself untouchable, his eyes scanning the room as though he could already sense their treacherous thoughts. "Lord Plagueis," Dooku began, his voice steady but cold, "the war nears its end. Soon we will be ready to claim the galaxy." Plagueis offered a thin smile, but his golden eyes betrayed a deeper knowledge, and his gaze lingered on Anakin, whose fiery ambition practically radiated through the Force. And Plagueis simply told them to get on with it. Without warning, the attack came. Anakin ignited his lightsaber with a roar, charging at Plagueis, while Dooku and Maul circled, their sabers humming to life. But Plagueis didn't move. His hands stayed at his sides, his expression one of cold amusement, and with a mere flick of his wrist, a surge of Force lightning erupted from his fingertips, sending Anakin flying backwards, his body wrecked with pain. Dooku and Maul leapt forward, and Plagueis raised his other hand, tearing a section of the wall apart with the Force, and hurling the debris towards them. The sheer power of his telekinesis sent Maul crashing to the ground, beneath a wave of stone and metal, his dual-bladed saber clattering to the floor. Dooku pressed his attack, his own blade moving in elegant arcs, but Plagueis simply stepped aside, his movements rather effortless. "You think you can defeat me?" Plagueis' voice was calm, almost amused. "I have mastered powers beyond your comprehension." As Dooku swung again, Plagueis unleashed a pulse of dark energy, slowing the Count's movements as he subtly began to drain the midichlorians from Dooku's body. The older Sith staggered, his strength fading, his strikes sluggish, as if the very Force was slipping away from him. Anakin recovered, rage in his eyes as he rushed at Plagueis again, but this time, the ancient Sith Lord didn't even raise his hand. The invisible grip of the Force tightened around Anakin's throat, lifting him off the ground. "The Chosen One," Plagueis whispered, tightening his control. "And yet so weak." Anakin struggled, gasping for breath, as he felt his connection to the Force dimming, the midichlorians within him withering under Plagueis' mastery. Maul lunged at Plagueis from behind, but the Sith Lord anticipated the move, sending a wave of lightning arcing through Maul's body, dropping him to his knees. The Zabrak's face contorted in pain, as Plagueis drained him as well, his hatred faltering beneath the pain and the power of his master. "You were all doomed the moment you thought you could betray me." Plagueis' voice echoed through the chamber, as he stood victorious, never having drawn his weapon, his enemies kneeling before him, and Plagueis unleashed his power, completely draining all three of them of their life force, and leaving behind only husks of former beings. Darth Plagueis would ascend to the throne of the galaxy as the Sith Emperor. Plagueis stood as the singular master of the Force, a being who transcended both life and death. The galaxy was his to mold, and time ceased to have any meaning under his rule. Centuries would pass like fleeting moments to the immortal Emperor. He'd conquered death itself. No wound could end him, no sickness could touch him. The dark side had become his eternal companion, and through it, he could siphon the very life essence from entire civilizations. Planets were drained to sustain his ever-growing power, the inhabitants withering under his dominion, as Plagueis fed off their life force, ensuring his reign could never end. Worlds once lush and vibrant became husks, monuments to the Emperor's insatiable hunger for power. Under his rule, the galaxy became a place of order, but one devoid of hope. Entire civilizations fell into despair, cultures eradicated, as Plagueis imposed his vision of perfection. Weak were eliminated, strong were bent to his will, and any form of resistance was crushed before it could begin. The galaxy was a place of cold, mechanical efficiency, its people living in fear of the Emperor's vast reach and the constant clone army. The Force was a tool of his design, and without the Jedi or Sith to oppose him, Plagueis molded the very fabric of the Force to his ideas, altering the currents of destiny. The stars themselves seemed to dim in his presence. The once vibrant galaxy was now a hollow shell, eternally trapped under the shadow of Plagueis, the undying Emperor who'd conquered everything, including the Force. And folks, that is our story. Dark side ending. A rare one. I haven't done a dark side ending in a while. I don't love them, but I really wanted to do one today, as I just read the Darth Plagueis novel. And I thought, yeah, but what if he just won and then never died and was super powered? I mean, he lived for centuries before he was killed by Palpatine, and Palpatine had to wait for Plagueis to just get like hammered and then fall asleep for the first time in literally centuries, because Plagueis and both Palpatine eventually conquered the need for sleep, but Plagueis, in kind of a relaxation celebration mode, fell asleep, and Palpatine killed him. That was the only way he could really do it, so wanted to explore if he just went to Naboo and never left himself vulnerable and just conquered the entire galaxy. Dark side ending, yeah. Ultimately, the rule of two, it expanded in this, and that would lead to all of the Sith basically trying to kill each other, so had to just leave one in the end. Doesn't ever find another apprentice, doesn't need to, because he's the most powerful being to ever live. So appreciate you guys listening. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in the next video.